Okay, now that you've got your design sort of figured out and that you've got your WordPress installation set up with the development theme and developer plugins, let's go ahead and take a look at some basic setup stuff with the functions file and getting your fonts installed. Before I do any of that though, I want to go ahead and show you that I'm using Dreamweaver as my IDE. You can use whatever IDE you want, and when I say IDE, I'm talking about an editor, code editor. And you know, you could use Bracket, you could use Komodo, you could use CoffeeScript, Sublime, Atom, whatever you want to use. But in all of them, you know, something that you might want to go ahead and do just so that you have your project handy is you can go ahead and set up a managed project, or in Dreamweaver it's called a managed site. Now, one of the things that you're going to potentially run into as a problem is, you know, if you've ever used Dreamweaver before to manage your sites, you know that you go up here to site and then you go to like new site, and you would give it a nickname here. So I would call it like maybe Canon Electric. Okay, and then you're going to choose your local site folder. Now, here's the thing. I've shown you already in previous demos that I want you ideally to be, I'm encouraging you, I should say, that I'm encouraging you to use the server as your development environment. When I say server, I mean the class server that's in the cloud. In the first assignment, you guys were using your own personal development environment on your, you know, your local computer, and I'm going to recommend in this assignment, as I said before, that you not do that. And the reason is because migrating WordPress files in with its database from one environment, server environment, to another server environment can be very tricky. And because we have such a tight amount of time to get your stuff turned in, if you have any problems, and there's a very good chance that you will, like I would say there's a stronger chance that you'll have problems than not upgrading, or excuse me, uploading and migrating your stuff, then I'm going to recommend that you just stay with the methods that I'm using. Now, here's the thing. If you've ever used Dreamweaver before, you know that this site manager is per site, which means it's per project. The problem with this is that let's do it the way that that I'm suggesting, and I'll show you some of the tricks or the issues that you might run into. So instead of me trying to explain it all up front, let's just walk through this. So if you go to local site folder here, I'm not going to use my XAMPP stuff. I'm not going to put stuff in htdocs. You could, if you wanted, you could put it in your normal documents folder. You could put it in htdocs. You can put it wherever you want. I'm just going to leave my stuff on the desktop for the purposes of this demo. You can organize it however you want. I'm going to click this little folder icon, and I'm going to go find my folder. And now here's the thing. Right now I've got my CE folder, which is my Canon Electric folder, if you remember from what I was showing you before. And if I were to drill down into that, this is my entire set of WordPress files, including, you know, all the administrative files and stuff, the core basically that you're not supposed to touch. I'm going to double click on that. And these are all core files except for what's in WP content. If you drill down in there, then you've got the plugins, you've got your themes, and under that, inside of your themes, you've got your, we left it called Top Cat as your development theme name. You've got 2017. I told you to leave one theme in case you have problems. So Top Cat, you know, some of you guys might be tempted to just make that your root level directory, and you could, but I'm going to leave it. I'm going to actually go back up to my desktop, and I'm going to leave it with CE, and I want to just show you a few things. So I'm going to click on choose, and now you would think that that might be enough, and it could be, except that if you want to use, here's the thing, if you want to use Dreamweaver as your FTP program, then you would need to go over here to servers, and you would need to add a server so that you can push your files up and pull them down and stuff like that. Now, you know, I actually kind of like using other programs, not using Dreamweaver, and the reason, here's the reason, is let's just go ahead and walk through this really quick and I'll show you. You don't have to follow along yet. I just want you to kind of look at what we're doing. So for the server name, this part right here in Dreamweaver is a nickname. So I could call this Canon electric, and I might say like mat MCC or something like that, so I know it's on the mat MCC server. We're going to connect using FTP, just regular old FTP. If you wanted, you could use FTPS, but I'm not going to. Let's just leave it at FTP. The FTP address is going to be the one that I gave you in a spreadsheet. In the event you lost that information, you're not sure what it is, what it should be is FTP dot your last name. In this in this instance, it's for me it's topcat.matmcc.org. Okay. The username is going to be whatever your username happens to be, and it's the same one that you've been using, so mine would be this. And then the password's the same one you've been using. Okay. And then the first thing I could do is I could go ahead and test it, and it should give me success, right? So it says successful test. So it did connect. Now, where it says root directory, here's the thing. Whenever you have a specific project on a server, ideally what you want to be able to do is tell it to drill down into that particular directory. And if you remember when we went up here to site, well, I can't, let me just save this. When I went up here to site, you see that CE is the directory. It's basically the project folder that's got all of the files. Well, if I go to the server and I can click this and click the edit button, ideally I'd want to be able to say CE, right? And then I can do a test, and it says that there's an error that occurred. And so, and then I could even try adding CE here, and we could do another test, and it's going to give me another error. It says a permission problem. We could even try like /CE. So let's do another test. Problem. We could try it like this. I just want to kind of show you this troubleshooting process, okay? Error occurred. So you might be going like, well, what gives? What's the issue? I'm just going to leave this open, and I want to show you something. If you jump back over here, this is a little different in different servers depending on what your server looks like. So here I've got my cPanel, and what I did was I clicked File Manager to go over here to my cPanel, and I want to just show you some different troubleshooting techniques. So one of the things that here, let's just go back up to public HTML. Let's go back up to our root level. This is where we would automatically come in, okay? And different servers are going to be set up differently, right? This is a really standard type of cPanel file manager for normal sort of modern looking cPanels like GoDaddy, for instance. And this might change a little bit over the years because they're always coming up with new looking interfaces and stuff. But the sort of troubleshooting techniques kind of remain the same. But you should know that all servers are set up differently. So what I show you here is sort of a technique for troubleshooting, but it's not that it's going to be identical for every server. That's really important. You need to kind of learn how to navigate through some of this stuff. All right, so we all know that in order to get to our particular content in this class, to go here and double click on public HTML. That's one of the ways, right? Well, I know that this CE folder for me is my WordPress installation that I want to use. So if I double click here, right, there's my CE. And I like to think, we like to think that, before, whenever I was explaining to you that public HTML is the equivalent to htdocs. And whenever we're talking about, excuse me, when we're talking about URLs, like basically like the thing that you would type up in here, right? That's the URL. Whenever you're talking about that, let's look at this that I told you before, like where it says topcat.matmcc.org. In your case, it would be your last name.matmcc.org. That maps to public_HTML on this particular server, or like if it were your computer, it would be like localhost that maps to the htdocs folder, right? And so that's why this is kind of confusing. Like you would go, well, the root directory is, empty. Like if I were to log in with FileZilla or CyberDuck or something, it would just show me something like that, right? It would just show me that I'm in the root directory. That's what it would look like. Well, okay, so here's the thing that's a little bit confusing is that for this particular FTP instance, it's using something different. It's not using the the web browser to find these files, right? It's using the file system. It's using file transfer protocol, and the file transfer protocol ends up going into the file system, and that means that it needs to be a relative path, or excuse me, back that up. It needs to be an absolute path in the file system. That means that this is the absolute path for this particular server setup file system. So if you were to want to match individual project to individual project in, say, Dreamweaver, this is the particular path you would need to go up here and copy, all right? And you would need to paste that here for your root directory, like that. And now if we hit test, it should work, and it says that it connected. All right, that's important. And what a lot of people are going to be tempted to do whenever this part fails is just to leave it blank and go, oh, well, it works whenever I just click test, you know, without anything in this root directory instance or entry. The problem with that, okay, is that Dreamweaver has a problem when you go all the way up to the root level of something and you make that umbrella, for instance, like localhost on your development computer, or like in this case, if we were to just leave it blank, then that's the same thing as saying basically that. Okay, that's the same thing as going straight to public HTML. Now, the problem with that is that you might have multiple projects inside of public underscore HTML, and Dreamweaver doesn't like to have multiple different sites that are mapped to one specific umbrella domain. It doesn't like it at all. So you really should be explicit. In fact, I've had problems where Dreamweaver will muck up my files because it gets confused whenever it has to manage a lot of basically subfolders within a domain if multiple domains, or excuse me, multiple sites that it's managing are trying to all tap into something that's under one domain when it's actually just using the root level. So if that doesn't fully jive with you, just know that if you're gonna use Dreamweaver for an individual project using stuff in this class, this is the way you would want to do it. You would want to map your entire WordPress installation root directory to the file system root directory on the server. Okay, so I'm going to click save, and I'm going to go ahead and click save. And what it's going to do is it's going to index all of those files that I have, right? And then now what's nice is that I can always just go, this is my main site, and then I can go into, oops, not that, sorry. I can go into WP content, I can go down into themes, and then I can go into TopCat, and these are all my files that are local, okay, because see here it says local files, and I can just manage all my FTP stuff straight from here, which is kind of nice. And if you wanted to see what it's going to look like whenever you're trying to transfer stuff up to the server, if you click this little box where it says expand to show local and remote sites, this has it has it backwards. For me, it's backwards. In most FTP programs, local sites are usually on the left and remote server stuff is usually on the right. So it's up to you how you want to do this. But if you want to leave it the way it is, maybe you're used to using Dreamweaver as your FTP resource, and you might just like seeing it like this, and that's fine. But I want to show you how you can change it, because if this throws you off and you're used to it being exactly the opposite, if you're not really careful, you can really screw things up by dragging in the wrong direction and overwriting all of the work that you just did. So I'm going to show you, if you go up here to Dreamweaver and you go to Preferences, on a Windows computer, it's going to be under Edit, and then Preferences is the bottom. So we'll go to Preferences, and then if you go down here to where it says Site, all right, we're going to go to the Site Preferences. Right here where it says Always Show Remote Files on the right, you can always, you know, switch this. You could say Always Show Local Files on the left. That's the way that you would do it. You would click Apply, and then you see here it changed it for me. It switched it back, and you know, I kind of really like it better this way, and so I'm gonna switch it. I just want you to know that you need to set up your environment the way you want to set your environment up, so that if you start dragging and dropping stuff, that you know what you're doing. because I've used a lot of FTP programs in my life, like FileZilla and stuff, the standard operating procedure is to have the local files on the left and the remote files on the server on the right. So that I don't screw stuff up, I'm going to go ahead and leave it like this. I'm going to hit apply, and I think I hit apply. Yeah, I hit apply, and then I'm just going to close this, and then now I've got this set up here. So you can set it up however you want. And just be aware of, if I'm starting to drag and drop stuff and you're used to using it the opposite way, you need to pay attention to your environment. And so the other thing I want to show you here is that this little button will automatically connect me to the server, and it'll go connect to the server, and it'll pull up the contents of that. And see, what's nice is by me telling it also, this is the other advantage of me telling it to go to the CE folder. I don't have to go and navigate myself, all the way down, into the entire, public HTML folder all the way down. It just automatically takes me straight to CE. Now, if you really hate the idea of having to go into WP content and then into themes, right, and then into the Topcat theme, then you can, make it so that it goes on your local environment. You set it up so that it goes, with your Topcat theme, and then it's set up to go straight to your Topcat theme again over here. But the only thing, the reason I don't want to do that is because there are going to be times when you're going to want to automatically just back your plugins up. You're going to want to back up your other stuff like your uploads and things like that, and you want to be able to transfer those too as part of your entire site. So I recommend that you do it this way, okay? And then you can always, if you have something selected, you can hit get or put. Put means you're going to put it up on the server. Get means you're going to pull it down from the server. So you need to make sure you're careful about what is selected, because it will overwrite your existing files. And then synchronize means that it will synchronize them. Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and close that for right now. But this is, by the way, like a little file panel that will be just a panel over here if you want to access it at any time right here. Okay, so that's how you can set FTP up in Dreamweaver for a website where you're not specifically working directly off of your local host environment, but you're translating and transferring, not translating, you're transferring your files still up to a main server that you're working on in code view, like for theme development or whatever. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and this is the way I recommend it. I told you in a different video that I really, really strongly recommend that you do not work directly out of cPanel. And when I say that, I mean do not do this. Like, don't go into your WP content, themes, Topcat, and then, like for instance, take a file here. Let's look at the functions file. Do not go here and click edit, right, and then start editing your stuff live like this, because you won't have any kind of backup. All right, it's just not a good idea. All right, I think that that's a really, really bad idea. A lot of people are tempted to do that. All right, the other thing that a lot of people like to do is they like to go log into their WordPress environments, and in the back end of WordPress there is also an editor there as well. I recommend that you don't use that either. And one of the reasons that I recommend not using these things is because, in addition to not having a backup somewhere else if you screw it up, the other thing that happens is that if it doesn't have good color coding and stuff, right? It doesn't have the same level of error checking as a really good IDE like Dreamweaver or Sublime or something like that. So I really strongly recommend that you do as I do in this particular case. A lot of times I don't really care what you do, but I've had a number of people run into problems, so I'm just letting you know that that's a really important thing, okay? Okay, so now that you know how to have your stuff set up, you can go ahead and move to the next demo. And of course, all of those things that I just explained to you using Dreamweaver, if you don't want to use Dreamweaver, you can still use something traditional like FileZilla or CyberDuck. You're still going to use the same kinds of settings, okay? But one thing I will say is that if you use something like CyberDuck or FileZilla, you don't have to manage a specific site. You can every time if you want, you can choose to drill down. The reason I manage my sites specifically like this, where I drill down into like the CE folder, is because Dreamweaver can really screw it up if I have multiple sites managed under a single domain. Okay.